This week is a special week on the podcast because we're talking about a special team for sure. But before we jump into that, do us a favor. And if you enjoy the F1 Rolling Start podcast, go ahead and like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to. It would mean the world to Benjamin
All
and
the
I.
things.
And also, we would love to give something back to you. We've already sent a few of these out, but every week we take a moment and we drink our favorite beverages out of some incredibly exclusive mugs.
Very
So
exclusive.
you have the chance to win the Plumbers Association of America or the pineapple mug. We have not given these ones out yet.
We haven't.
They're signed by us, but they have not gone out. And if you have not
True.
seen Benjamin's signature, you're in for a treat because it is much like my
gibberish.
2-year-old's drawings.
It absolutely is.
We're very excited. So make sure you sign up for that. You can do that in the show notes or on our Instagram page, F1 Rolling Start, wherever you listen to it. Like and subscribe. But Benjamin, this week we have a special team in store.
You know, we really do. We're going to talk today about a team that has 7 world championships
Hey.
among its esteemed alumni. So I do have a question for you. What do Sebastian Vettel, Daniel Ricciardo, Max Verstappen, Carlos Sainz, Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon all have in common? They all drove for AlphaTauri.
The Toro Rosso, the Raging Bulls.
They all came through this team. Now, here's the thing, and I've been thinking about this as I was doing my reading and research this week. This team, I believe, does not get enough credit for the way they have developed.
I agree.
Champions, the way they have developed race winners, the way they have developed talent. These guys, there's 118 wins among racers that have come through their team, 7 world titles. That is not bad.
No, not at all.
That's incredible. And so this is a team that really has kind of stayed further back off the grid, and there's different reasons for that. But they've had some really incredible talent that started there.
They've understood their assignment. So AlphaTauri was bought by Red Bull. It was a failing team at the time. Obviously, it wasn't called AlphaTauri.
Yeah.
They bought it as a feeder team for their main Formula One team.
Which makes sense.
Red Bull. Which makes, if you got the extra money because of all the energy drinks you're selling, why not buy a Formula One team?
Why not?
At the time, Formula One teams were not valued nearly as high as they are
during
now.
this
is when they were like all losing money,
going for £1 or something like that.
And so when it comes to their purpose, they have by far, based off the stats that we just went over, they've accomplished it. They have produced some of the most incredible drivers. We've got some of them listed here: Sebastian Vettel, Daniel Ricciardo, Max Verstappen, Carlos Sainz, Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon, and many, many more.
Yeah, and that's not
these are household names.
That's not even to talk about some of the drivers that are A, still on the team.
Correct.
Yuki. B, in the wings waiting for their shot. Liam Lawson, right? Like 100%. Phenomenal talent. And so,
they've understood their assignment.
They
have executed, and they continue to.
They really do. And, one of the things that I'm actually, I want to pause here for a second. And I don't think we've even actually talked about this.
Let's slow it down
beforehand, but let's slow down for a second. You know what this team reminds me of?
I have no idea.
They remind me of my parents.
What? Okay.
Here's why.
Mr. and Mrs. K.
Mr. and Mrs. K. And all the parents out there who put in so much work.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes, not in the limelight, who put in so much flipping work.
Unseen,
unthanked.
Right.
For their kids who go on to do all the things, right?
Right.
We're parents.
Yep.
There's a lot of work that you put in. And at the end of the day, you're like, I just want you to say thank you. And then your kids are like 2 and 4. Right. But it's one of these things where this team, they have done the work behind the scenes. They've invested, they've developed, they've trained, they have really put in the time, the effort, the energy to raise up some of the most incredible household name drivers in F1 in the world, and they don't get the credit for it. And so this team they remind me of folks who, again, understand the assignment. They're not here to win. They're here to develop winners.
Yeah. Their drivers want to win, but they definitely don't tend to do that very often.
No.
We have some interesting stats from their recent history. So 2019, they finished 6th in the Constructors' Championship with 85 points.
Yeah. Which the year before, they were 9th.
It's not bad. Well, that actually is pretty bad. They finished 6th.
Points,
That's the one from last. Then in 2020, they went to 7th. Then in 2021, with Yuki and Pierre, the dynamic duo themselves.
Oh, yeah.
The funnest pairing at AlphaTauri ever. They actually had one of their greatest seasons ever with 142 points. They finished 6th. And then in 2022, they dropped down to 9th again, 35
Same pairing.
points. Pierre and Yuki. And then last year was the year of drivers for them. They had 4 different drivers. They finished 8th, and they had 25 points. So on paper, it is a downward trend at the moment. It is to the right and down for AlphaTauri.
Yeah. Something you called out that I think is really fascinating. In 2022, they finished 9th, and they've got 35 points. This last year, 23, they finished 8th, one position higher with 10 less points.
Right.
Which just talks to how hard it is in the era of Red Bull dominance. Note the hat. Note the number 1 on the hat, James. You see
I've seen the number 1.
Uno. Yeah. 1. Whatever 1 is in Dutch. 1.
You could take, where's your hat made?
Where's it made?
Yeah. I think yours is made in China.
No, it's a 950 New Era, wherever. Probably China. Yeah. I don't know.
Mine's not. Mine's
yours
Mercedes
is Germany.
Hat. It's embroidered and it's made in Italy. So it also does. I don't know if you've noticed this, but it doesn't have the markings that I would expect from a Chuck E. Cheese all over it like yours. So
you know, at the end of the day, all that matters is the number 1 on the hat. And the flag.
Oh,
the flag of winning.
Is that the Italian flag? So
no, not at all. But here's the thing. They finished 9th last year, 35 points. 8th this year, 10 less points. It just speaks to how hard it is now to get points.
Yes, 100%. Not only does it speak to how hard it is to get points, it also speaks to the fact that they are not improving. Here's what's interesting about them. They come into this season of 2023, not this season because we're in 2024 now.
We are now. Last
season.
January 2024, folks.
Last season, they came in trying to make a name for themselves outside of Red Bull. So instead of being just known as the Red Bull baby sister team, they wanted to really make a shift. And it didn't work. They went 9th, they went 8th. And so, they started 23 with probably arguably the worst car on the grid.
Yeah.
It took a slew of updates throughout the entire year to turn their situation around, which only ended them at 8th, which means that they beat Haas and Alfa Romeo. And you don't really have to do much to beat Haas
this
and
year.
Alfa Romeo.
No. Yeah.
It really was not hard for them. And so, P8,
still a big deal.
It's a good respectable place from where they started because they were in last for the majority of the season.
Mm-hmm.
However, my question is P8 from Red Bull's sister team, the team that took the most historic season of winning ever in the history of F1, and their baby sister comes 8th and barely beats Haas and Alfa Romeo. My question to you is that even acceptable?
Yeah. There's not really another pairing that you can look at that's similar. I think the one thing that comes to my mind is teams that use the same power unit.
Yeah.
It's not the same.
No.
But it's like Haas uses Ferrari power unit, right? There's always a massive gap. Now, again, not the same. This team really is much more connected to Red Bull, and there is still that distance. But that's what comes to my mind is there is distance.
And there's always been those moments across the grid. Like back in the day, Force India, they purchased parts from Mercedes' previous year car that were within the regulations to be able to do it. Ferrari, power unit, gearbox, rear, all of that, Alfa Romeo would use a lot of their design things that they could buy underneath the regulations. They would use it so they didn't have to produce it. Lower teams with lower budgets that can't produce their own parts, they do a lot of that. The difference is that Ferrari didn't own Alfa Romeo.
I know.
And Mercedes definitely didn't own Force India. And so there was no backdoor moment. And of course they say there isn't, but
yeah, but again, it doesn't make sense on one hand. On the other hand, it kind of does. Does Red Bull really want their other team, which to this point's main purpose is a training ground? It's a space where
it gave them their two poster boys. It gave them Vettel and it gave them Verstappen.
But it gave them those drivers to win at Red Bull.
Correct.
Right? So it's like we have this team so that we don't have to just pull folks from F2 and F3. We can have an F1 team that isn't going to win.
Right.
But it's going to be a space where we can influence, we can have our say, we can move the drivers around, we can give them practice. And I think that's the point of it, right? They want a team that's not going to win, but can produce drivers who will. And so in that case, you don't need them to place third, fourth, fifth. They can stay at the back.
I think they do want them to be somewhat successful. I do think it is ostentatious for them to have a very fast sister team that's snaking as many points and picking up anything from those that trail behind them. And so if you've got a weekend where Mercedes
would they ever want that team to ever get close to
AlphaTauri because it beats them out, then they're in for it. They're here for it.
Yeah, but they would never, ever in a million years want that team to get close to beating them.
No, of course not. No team does.
Right? So that's the thing. It's like, they're our sister team. They can't ever beat us. Imagine if they were to place higher than Red Bull. Seriously.
That'd be amazing.
No, it wouldn't be. Not for Red Bull.
It'd be amazing for me.
It would be. So Red Bull doesn't want that. And they may clap when Pierre Gasly wins in Monza. But again, Max and Lewis crashed out. It didn't matter, right? So
100%.
But yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think Red Bull knows what AlphaTauri is there to do.
Their season, to me, if we were to say it in a word, was confusing. The car was confusing. The design was confusing. Who was going to be driving on an even weekend was confusing.
Yeah.
Nick de Vries' performance was confusing. The way that they swapped drivers in and out was confusing. All of it was really confusing. But I think before we jump into that, we have to back up and we have to go like, what was the narrative coming into like preseason testing? Like Nick de Vries, Yuki Tsunoda.
Yeah.
This is AlphaTauri's year. This is the year where we go beyond where we ever have been.
Well, so I think the narrative was Pierre Gasly's pissed and he's leaving.
Correct.
He's done.
He knows that he's never going to get a seat at Red Bull. He's never going to be Max's partner again. That opportunity is gone.
Yeah.
And he knows that AlphaTauri is not going to win championships when Red Bull is dominating. So he has a choice. Do I stay here and be second fiddle or do I leave? And he leaves.
Yeah. So Pierre and Yuki, dynamic duo, they were 6th in 2021. 2022, they drop almost 100 points to 9th and 35 points. So Pierre Gasly is, I'm gone, I'm done, peace. So it's Yuki. Nick, he comes into Monza. He drives for Albon, who's out with a surgery in a Williams. He scores,
a terrible Williams.
Terrible.
So bad.
He scores in the points.
Drives his arms off. Literally, he had to be helped out of the car. He was like, guys, I can't lift my arms.
Can't get out of the car because he hadn't practiced at that level to drive. And so he goes lights out. Everyone's buzzing. Everyone's talking about it. Like, he gets points. It's incredible. And so he gets signed. And now Yuki's not doing so hot.
Yuki's not doing, it's not that he's not doing hot. It's just that he's on his teammate was Pierre Gasly.
True, but also it's
and he wasn't doing as
the way
as
he
good as he did this
approached
year.
the sport. Some would have said, does this guy like want to be
Right.
here?
It was somewhat lackadaisical.
It was lackadaisical. It was
100%.
lackluster. And so
Ooh, another L. Give me another L.
I'll think of one. So Nick gets signed, and there's already talks about how Nick is going to set the standard.
Mad hype.
This guy's coming.
No, there's not just stories. He's talking smack.
He's talking
smack
about he's the new standard.
I'm going to be the leader of this team. I'm not coming here to play games. I'm not coming here to be nice. I can't even not laugh about it.
It's so preseason. There's some hype that he's creating himself.
Yeah,
but also he scored on his maiden F1 race.
And he was a Formula E champion
at Monza too.
He was Mercedes reserve driver. Toto loves Nick De Vries.
Yeah, Formula 2, Formula E champion. Like he's done some stuff.
On paper, you're like, yeah, this guy, he was older.
Yeah.
He's 28 years old. Yeah. So older than most, considering Max came, he started driving Toro Rosso at 17. So, there was this question of, why doesn't he have a Formula One seat? Yeah. Which was promptly answered.
Because the preseason
he can't drive
high ended in the UK because De Vries starts the season by finishing 14th, DNF, 18th, 12th, 14th, 18th, 17th, can't crack points. And again, he scored in a Williams at Monza, maiden race. Now again, attributed to a bunch of different things, but he cannot crack into the points and comes in with a splash in Monza.
And the thing is that Tsunoda during the entire time from Bahrain to Britain was
I like that. Bahrain to Britain. Very nice.
We're going with alliteration today. Comfortably ahead and beating De Vries. During that period, he was absolutely solidifying his place on that team. And so he was like, you know what? Pride comes before the fall, Nick. So you go ahead and talk all your smack. I'm just going to go ahead and be humble, focus on when I'm going to open up my restaurant, and I'm going to drive the pants off of this undrivable car.
Undrivable. He was consistent. He was constant. He was
scoring points
in the points or scoring in the points or really close. So
he was 11th quite
right. So in those same races, Yuki's 11th, 10th, 11th, 15th, 12th, 14th, 19th was a weird one, then 15th. So he's actually showing that he can keep this car in around 11th or 10th.
You know what it was? It's the car was one thing, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But to me, it showed maturity on Yuki's part. For the last few years, that's been the story, is that Yuki's hot-headed, he's emotional, he makes mistakes, and he did make emotional mistakes. Mexico was the biggest one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
But this year, he got those 10, like that Australia thing is because he wasn't in that mess with Alpine.
Yeah.
And so he was able to mop up those points
Former
when
teammate,
they present
Gasly.
For a team like Gasly and Albon come together, cause a massive crash. Who's there to mop up the points? Yuki Tsunoda. He drove maturely this year in a way that we haven't seen come from him, and he drove really fast.
Yeah, he really did. He was smart. He was less emotional. He was consistent. So he shows this is where the car's at. I can give you 11th or 10th. I can get some points when I'm able to. And so and De Vries just can't do it. And so meanwhile,
in the background,
Danny Boy,
the reserve driver for Red Bull,
the wings. He's at Red Bull. He's biding his time. He's
smiling at every one of the Grand Prix he's at.
He's taking his time. He's not really
launching his wine brand.
The full, I want to take time off from F1. He's still there.
100%.
Some time off. But there's something that happens at the British Grand Prix after the race, actually, that just makes Red Bull say, okay, De Vries, we're done here.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you remember what it was?
The tire test.
Yes, the tire test. Danny Ricciardo drives for Red Bull, the RB19, test drives it around, and within a couple laps, he finishes within, I think it was a 10th of Max's pace.
No. It wasn't just Max's pace. It was Max's fastest lap.
Yeah, it was for qualifying.
Yes. It was this qualifying lap that got him P1.
Yeah.
And here comes Danny Rick after
hadn't driven in a minute.
An atrocious few seasons at McLaren.
Yep.
And just gets in the car.
I'm back.
And rickifies it.
And literally, Red Bull, Helmut Marko is like, okay, we've seen enough.
Yep.
It's all we need is a tire test. Nick de Vries are gone. Now, Helmut made an interesting comment as I was looking into this.
Helmut made a few.
He did. Helmut makes too many for his own good, but he's been around for a while. But still, less comments is probably better. But he said this. I want to actually read this whole thing because it's interesting.
Great.
He said, quote, "We made the move with de Vries because stagnation set in. There was no progress. He didn't meet expectations. He just didn't fit." Later on, he says, quote, "He is already 28, which for F1 drivers is actually towards the older side.
Mm-hmm.
He has a lot of experience and knowledge that he gained by driving the cars of different Formula One teams as a test driver. True. In my opinion, Nick cannot be considered a rookie." Now, this is interesting. Nick, technically a rookie, as far as him being on the grid.
Correct.
First time. But he's not. He has a lot of experience. And so I think Helmut Red Bull is holding him to a higher standard, which is why after 10 races where he didn't progress, they're like, we're done. We're moving on.
Yep.
And they didn't actually give him the entire season. They didn't give him longer. And I think
they didn't Logan him.
God.
If you just ever want to just make Ben twitch, just say Logan Sargent.
Why? It's Williams holding on to this guy. Anyway, we'll get to Logan in just a second. My question to you is this. I have two, actually. Do you feel Red Bull should have given him more time to develop?
Do I feel that Red Bull should have given Nick de Vries more time to develop?
Was Helmut right? He's not a rookie. Standards are different.
I'll answer both. Was Helmut Marko right? Was Marko Helmut? What's his name?
Helmut Marko.
Was he right? Yes.
I think
was
so.
Red Bull right to kick him out after 10 races? Yes.
See, here's the thing. As a Red Bull fan, I want to agree wholeheartedly with you because I love the...
You have to agree with me because this is what you and I both love about this sport. True. It is a meritocracy. Perform or go home.
True. I don't love the cruelty of it.
It's not cruel.
Here's my thing, though. Listen,
it's upfront. Everyone's upfront about it. It's not cruel.
Listen to me for 1 second, though. Let's look at another sport. Let's look at basketball for a second. Different sports, obviously, different ways of playing. It's much more of a team sport. However, there's a couple people that come to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jordan being one,
mm-hmm.
LeBron James being number two. Both these guys, it took a hot minute for them to actually get their first championship. Now, again, this is different than F1 because there's a ton more games.
There's also individual stats.
True. However, there was time that was needed for the champion to achieve that. F1 moves real quick.
Yes, but
you either perform or you gone. And there's part of me that loves that. But part of me is asking myself, hang on a second. Are we missing out on future race winner Nick de Vries by saying you get 10, you're done? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think I still stand by what I say. The reality is that Nick de Vries was not only not a rookie. Okay, yes, by paper he was a rookie, sure.
A 28-year-old rookie.
I don't think he had any less preparation than Oscar Piastri had.
No, yeah.
And so Oscar Piastri got to drive the old F1 car. Nick De Vries got to drive the old Mercedes F1 car. So he also got to race in a Formula One season, FIA race in a Formula One car before anyone else did. And so this man has experience.
Mm-hmm.
Oscar comes in, has an incredible season.
Yeah.
Now he had a better car, 100%. But when their car didn't start out great, and when Oscar's car didn't start out great, what was the narrative with McLaren? Oh, man, Norris is on his heels. No, they just both have a really crappy car.
Yeah.
What was the narrative? Yuki's holding it together. Nick can't get his feet together.
Yeah.
And it was true. You can't say that Nick should have had a long time if you can't also say that Logan should have a long time.
Well, here's
now, Logan got time.
Logan, I'm not saying he should have had a longer time. I'm saying the man finished, 21st?
You wouldn't be upset if Logan got kicked out after 10 races.
Oh, of course I wouldn't.
So you can't be upset that Nick did.
Logan finished in 21st. Nick finished in 22nd. Logan had 1 point. Nick had 0 points. I guess my question is, I do love that it is sink or swim in F1.
100%.
The best rise to the top.
Correct.
I do love that about it. I do think my question is, you do have drivers who, on paper, are finishing ahead of other drivers, right? Nick, he's finishing, the highest he got was 12th. There's a bunch of drivers who finished behind him.
Totally.
Right? Yeah, he's not in the points.
Totally.
But he's not finishing 20th, 19th, 20th, like our other friend.
The problem is that his car can score points.
To this point, Yuki had scored 2 points. 10th and 10th.
Points.
Right? So, yes, it can. But the guy who'd been here for now third season.
But there's so much more into, you got to think back onto, remember what it looked like to watch Nick get that car around a track? It was awkward. It was so weird.
Yeah,
it was
he wasn't driving
good.
it.
He couldn't figure it out.
True.
And so it's so different. And then you take F1, there's 20 drivers. How many people are on a single NBA team?
I think it's 15 at least.
Right. How many NBA teams are there?
Oh, I don't know, like 30.
Exactly. So you need time to be able to distinguish yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's fair for an NBA team. I think that's fair. There's 53 peeps on a football
I think it's
team?
it's plus 50. So I think it's like 53 on a football team.
On a football team.
Yeah.
And there's like there's a lot of football teams. Yeah. And so you need time to be able to make a name for yourself. There's 20. There's 20. There's 10 teams.
I know.
There's not enough time. You either go or you don't. We look at this list of drivers within Toro Rosso, and even over the last, Danny Kvyat and, Alex Albon, these people have made either a name for themselves or they haven't. Pierre Gasly, Yuki Tsunoda, like Nick De Vries, Liam Lawson. Liam Lawson came in and drove better than Nick De Vries did. And he had way less experience than Nick did. So you can't say that it's an experience-based thing. They've been saying in F1 that people need more experience to be able to get to Formula One.
They have.
But then why does Max Verstappen come in? This is me saying this at 17 years old.
Wearing a Mercedes hat, no doubt.
I'm just saying. Where's the kid from flipping Britain that drove for McLaren come in and just dominate, named Lewis Hamilton? Like, there is a way to do it. And I get it. That was years ago, and it was a very different. That's 10 years ago. It was so different. But at the same time, is it?
I think that's the ultimate question when it comes to F1. Is it a sport where the best will hit the ground running?
Okay, so let me ask you this question. If we make it easier for people to get to F1, will that make F1 better?
No. I don't know if we should make it easier to get to F1. But once you're there, and I'm not advocating for this, but once you're there, is there like a buffer a true rookie year where this is your rookie season?
Which Tsunoda got. 100%.
Yeah,
Tsunoda
he
got
got
arguably 3 times. So
absolutely
I get that.
right. So like, and Lawson, I mean, he got half of that.
Yep.
Like a quarter of a
100%.
season.
100%.
Sargent has, my
Yep.
God, I can't even with him. But
And I think this is not. I don't think this is everyone's story, because even when you look at Mick Schumacher, he got 2 seasons.
here's a theory: the people who race for Red Bull, there is no mercy.
No,
there is no time.
no, exactly.
You get what you get.
Correct.
And it's an honor to get what you get. You want to race for
I
Haas?
get to do this. I get to do this.
You want to go race for Haas and have 2 seasons to be a rookie? Sure, go race for Haas.
Go for it.
You
Go
want to
for
race
it.
for Williams?
We're gonna put you in a car that's
perpetual.
competitive.
We're gonna re-sign you after you're a 21st driver.
That's true.
Right?
That's
So
very
I
true.
think that's
very
the
true.
distinguishing factor. Red Bull's like, you don't get that here.
No, you don't get it. You don't get it at all.
And then Helmut will give you a call. Christian's not going to talk to you.
Yeah.
Show him the door.
100%. No, I think what we are talking about is a very Red Bull specific thing for sure.
Which maybe that's how you stay number one. Maybe that's how you win.
Yeah, they've never stayed
winning.
number one, but yeah, you know that's.
They've been number one the last 3 years, so yes, they've stayed
last 2
twice.
years. Red Bull.
They've stayed number one twice.
Yeah, well, for long periods of time. They're no Ferrari or Mercedes, but they're cute. They're what they're going to get to.
Mercedes has
it's respectable.
8.
Mm-hmm.
Rebel's got 7. Rebel's got 7.
You can't just say Mercedes has 8.
They have
Mercedes has 8 consecutive.
Red Bull has 7. Bookends.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Continuing on. Okay, so we figured that piece out. Red Bull's the cool one. Red Bull's
this.
We figured it out. I knew if we just talked it out long enough, we'd reach an answer.
Yes, 100%.
Okay, wait. So we're back to AlphaTauri and their season. So Danny Rick does the test drive, drives,
crushes it
that
in the RB19.
RB19 finishes. De Vries gets dropped. Danny then drives in Hungary and Belgium, breaks his hand.
And to say that anticipation for what Danny Rick was going to do was at an all-time high. And at the same time, this was right as AlphaTauri's car started to make the turn towards better. Like, it had gone from a travesty to like, okay, this thing can actually get around the course in a decent way now.
Yep.
And so Danny Rick comes out. Best finish for him this season was 7th. And his best qualifying was 4th, which in that car,
I mean, unreal.
Both
of those happened in Mexico.
But those are the highlights of Danny Rick. What happened after the second race? He crashes.
Well, after the second race, he breaks his hand in practice in the Netherlands. Now the weather was awful, but he breaks his hand, misses the 5 races.
No, the best part about that whole story is the fact that he literally broke his hand because he kept his hand on the steering wheel,
avoiding the guy
so that he could not hit the guy that took his seat. In F1, they tell you, if you know you're going to crash, take your hands off the wheel because the force will break your hand. The guy, if he was to take his hands off, would have just flipping gone straight into Piastri. And I said, you know what, Danny, you're a classy guy. You're a classy guy.
Is there a part of Danny who would have been like, I'm just gonna go straight into this?
There's a part of me that would have been like, sucker, because he wasn't,
Yeah. But anyway, Danny breaks the hand. He's out. Enter Liam Lawson.
Which I mean, I don't.
Who's
follow
Liam
F2.
Lawson?
I don't follow the what's the series?
I don't follow the minor leagues in baseball. Yeah, the Lake Erie, monsters, whoever the heck they are. No, we don't. The Lake Erie Captains. I don't follow them.
The Chesapeake Bay Maniacs. No one's watching them.
F2, F3. I don't follow these.
No.
But no,
I've watched an F2 race at once or twice. It's actually really fun. We should watch a couple.
Sure.
But agreed. Lawson comes out of nowhere, and we all I'm running off of Yuki and Nick De Vries at this point. I was pumped because it was like an injection into the season.
Yes.
Red Bull was dominating like crazy.
Here comes a guy mid-weekend.
Exactly.
Into the seat.
Yeah, because Ricardo snapped his hand
Right.
in a practice session going
And
into a race
he
weekend.
finishes 13th coming off the bench. And then he finishes 11th the next race. Then he finishes in the points in Singapore, 9th. And then back to 11th, back to 17th. So he scores maiden points within his first 3 races in F1. So
and you know what's interesting about that is that the narrative then shifts from like De Vries is going to be the team captain for AlphaTauri to, oh, now Lawson's going to sweep the floor with Tsunoda. Do you remember that? Like it was, people were kind of like, oh man, Tsunoda better watch out.
Well, same thing with Danny, right?
Same thing with Danny. Better watch
Nick's
out.
Gonna put the pressure on Yuki. Danny's gonna really put the pressure on Yuki. Here comes
Lawson's gonna put the pressure on Yuki,
right? And
it didn't happen. Yuki received 0 pressure. He outscored them. He outqualified. He outqualified De Vries 8-2. He outqualified Lawson 4-1. He outqualified Ricardo 4-3. He's best finished was 6th place on the grid for Abu Dhabi, which was probably one of my favorite races of his ever.
Yeah.
He was just incredible in Abu Dhabi. He didn't even know he was leading the race at one point, which was just
unreal.
Total Yuki hilarity.
Unreal.
And it was just a similar story. He just completely took a moment, and every race he was almost every single race, he was comfortably ahead of his teammates. And at the end of the season, who reigned triumphant at AlphaTauri?
Yuki.
But my guy, Yuki.
Yeah, at the end of the season, Yuki finishes 14th with 17 points. His next teammate is down in 17th, Danny, with 6 points, which in a season where points are literally the rarest of all rare things, that's a massive gap.
Massive.
Again, Danny wasn't racing the entire season, but it's still a gap. Liam's down in 20th with 2, and then the 2 drivers that we don't really care about because it doesn't count when you're outside of the top 20, Logan Sargent and then Nick. So Yuki held it together. I mean, I think that's the story.
That is the story for AlphaTauri. Now, if like I was saying, Yuki outqualifying De Vries 8-2, great. Lawson 4-1, Ricardo 4-3. So if you were to take Ricardo and him and you were to put them in the season together,
which will happen this year,
which will be coming up in 2024, there will be a point where either they're level or Ricardo pulls ahead.
I think Ricardo's going to
most likely we're going to see Ricardo pull ahead, because I don't know if you were to put Yuki in a Red Bull if he would come within a 10th of Max Verstappen's lap time.
No.
And I think as much as, Ricardo came in and he lit the paddock up halfway through the season, 2 incredible races at the Hungaroring and at Spa, and then his comeback was stopped when he snapped his wrist at Zandvoort. Yeah. But I think, he's coming into this year, for me, seems super focused, super ambitious about getting back to that Red Bull spot.
Yeah.
He's looking at this season and going, okay, I know that when silly season comes to play, when all of the contracts of the 10 drivers, is it 10 or 11 drivers on the grid's contracts are up this year, one of those drivers is Sergio Perez. I know Max is going to get re-signed, even if it's expired every month. It doesn't matter. Red Bull's keeping him. And so I want that seat. So he's going to come out of the gates swinging in 2024. I think we're going to see some elbows out.
Yeah.
Crazy Ricardo.
I think that, and this is my theory, the pressure has shifted from Yuki to Checo. Yuki's teammate, Danny, is not putting pressure on Yuki. He's putting pressure on Checo.
Yep.
So Yuki's like, hey,
I don't think anyone's expecting Yuki to outperform Danny Ricciardo.
Heck no. So I think this year Yuki's like, hey, I'm here. I'm going to just race. Danny's not trying to get me out of a seat. He's trying to get Checo out of a seat. So I think in some ways Yuki is going to actually feel less pressure.
Yeah.
Because Danny's not looking at him. He's looking at the Red Bull team. That's where he wants to be. That's where he wants to join. That's where he wants to get to. So that is, I think, where the true pressure that Daniel's going to be applying. And if AlphaTauri has a car that's closer to the RB19, that pressure may actually materialize. It may actually be real.
Yeah.
And Checo may actually feel it. So that's, I think, what the difference is going to be this year. Yuki's not going to have maybe the pressure that he had this year, as opposed to Checo having it.
Man, it's going to be an exciting 2024 season for sure. I'm trying to figure out when Yuki's contract ends. I can't remember if he's one of the guys that it ends in 2024.
Well, I know Danny and Yuki were both signed
for one more year.
Yeah,
so I
believe they're I believe both of them were signed through the end of the season.
I'd be so interested to see I'm trying to think of who could replace him. It would be a risk for them because he has been so consistent in 2023. What does it look like for them? They're not going to replace him with Lawson. He outscored Lawson. So I don't see why
Lawson
they would
was in
do
for
that.
5 races though.
Yeah, but
he scored on his 3rd race.
Yeah,
and he can drive. So,
but if Yuki
Lawson's
comes out and he
coming
starts
in.
scoring, but they next year, we're jumping ahead, but next year they could give. They're basically AlphaTauri is going to have the RB19. Is what it's looking like. And so if they have the RB19, that they are they're clearing Haas, they're clearing Alfa Romeo, they're clearing Alpine, they're clearing probably Aston Martin, arguably. And so they could come out flipping, swinging.
But you mean Haas isn't going to put up a fight?
Haas is never going to put up a fight.
Yeah, no, I mean, if that's actually what's happening and they're going to get that car or close to it, then yeah, you put Danny in that thing.
He was in a 10th of Max.
He qualified 4th in Mexico.
In an AlphaTauri.
Unreal.
It's going to be nuts.
Unreal. I mean, I do have a question going back briefly to Mexico. And this may or may not matter since they're changing up their car, but was Mexico truly just a one-off?
No, I don't think so. I think that was Danny showing his true pace. I think that was, even in the interviews after, he had mentioned if a few things didn't happen throughout the race, he thinks he could have gotten an additional position. And he was hunting down.
At the end.
Oh my gosh. He was on, I don't know what, that car must have been running on fumes or something because it was ripping around the track. He was driving the pants off of that.
He almost passed Russell.
Yeah, exactly. He was hunting down a Mercedes at the end. I was getting nervous.
You were, because I was watching the Times. I was watching the Times, and he was within.
He was ripping. He literally, I think he gave like Russell a hug afterwards. Like, I almost had you. Like he was into it, and that's what we want to see.
Yeah,
because when he's in a place where he's having fun but he's serious,
yeah,
he really drives well.
I'm excited for him to set. I don't want to say set the standard, but because all these other drivers have come in saying they're going to set the standard for Yuki, but it's Danny, and he's starting the season with them.
Okay, but here's the thing I will say: I don't think he's driving Mexico was that much better than Yuki's driving Abu Dhabi. So if Yuki comes into 2024 driving like
because
Abu
Yuki
Dhabi,
was leading in Abu Dhabi,
he finished 6th in an AlphaTauri. It doesn't make any sense. Like it literally was it 6th or 7th. I can't remember because I always get confused with the.
Let me look real quick.
Qualified 6th.
I think he was 8th. Yeah. Finished 8th.
Yep. So he had like
which is phenomenal,
incredible drive.
Yeah, phenomenal.
I'm like, if he drives like that all this year, and Danny drives like he did in Mexico all this year,
my God,
and they give him a car that's majority of Red Bull parts, it's gonna be insane.
It will be.
It will be a great season for them.
It will be.
Again, my word for them in 2023 is confusing. They were all over the place. They had 4 different drivers. I don't blame it. They had a car that was nowhere at the beginning. France Tost was like, the engineers lied to me. They told me it was going to be good. It was terrible. He's one of the most hilarious people in the world to me.
Well, and
he's an enigma.
I'm thinking about this for a second. We're going back to what we talked about at the beginning of the episode about Red Bull being involved. Do you think some of the confusion with their season was because Helmut Marko gets to make a call and just F up your driver lineup? Does that lend to some of the chaos and confusion being that attached to Red Bull?
Yeah, I think you're going to obviously get complexities when you're sharing drivers across all the teams.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if Toto just gets to call Williams and say, get rid of Sargent for real. He's
but
done.
he can't.
No.
Because that's not how they operate.
No.
And so you don't get that. Now, would I want him to? Yes. But at the same time, it's better because we don't. And to your point, this is why I don't like the idea of where the conversation of should we give rookies more time leads to, because then you start instituting, the only way to do that is to institute rules. You can't kick someone out mid-season. And then I'm like, okay, so now we're telling teams one more rule. It's the last thing we flipping need. And so whereas a team like Williams is like, I'm in a rock and a hard place, so the rookie has to get another chance because I don't really have another choice or the budget to sign somebody that I want. Like I can't afford Liam Lawson. I would gladly replace Sargent with Liam, but I can't. So I'm going to keep Liam and he gets another chance. And next thing you know, Sargent comes out and all of a sudden all he needed was one more season and he starts scoring points. Highly unlikely. But at the same time, what if?
Yeah.
There's your chance.
Yeah.
There's your LeBron or your Michael Jordan moment where the person just needed one more season. But if you want that one more season, don't go to Red Bull.
Yes.
Because you're not going to get it.
And they
are upfront about
it. They are honest about it.
You have to give them that.
At least they're honest about the fact that, hey, we are ferocious here. Mm-hmm. We are violent here.
You want us desperately as a driver. We don't know if we want you, and we're not going to ever tell you if we do.
Yeah.
We'll let you know once you
even
give us
when
a
you
world
win races for us.
Yes.
Checo, you've won races for us.
Yes.
You finished second place. We're still like, yeah, okay. You got to prove yourself.
We're going to tell everyone we're okay with it, but we're also we brought Danny Rick into the bottom team to stress you out. So you have fun with your performance coach, but he's going to go win races. Like it's intense. They're intense.
They are. And
I love it. I love it. I love to watch it from afar. It's stressful. I wouldn't want to be a part of it, but I'm not the one wearing the hat. So
true. I guess, you can't have it all. You can't want extra time.
I don't know. I had 8 years of it all. I had 8 years of it all.
No, you can't want extra time for the rookies and also want your team to be as dominant as they have been.
It's true. No, there needs to be, and that is what I do love about F1 is there is an element of ruthlessness.
There it is.
I think my question to you is, when it comes to Formula One,
yes,
do we feel like that element of it's ruthless is necessary?
I don't think Americans are comfortable with ruthlessness in sports in the same way that Europeans or F1 fans are.
That's so interesting. Talk to me about that.
So Americans, we love the underdog story. We love the slow burn. We love being nice. We got really nice, right? Nice. We love making sure that what we're saying, how we're doing things is really nice. And again, in sports, they've been impacted by that.
100%.
And so part of me, and this is where like the duality of it is confusing, and there's tension that I feel in it, because on the one hand, I'm going to pull my other day job into this for a second if I can.
Yeah, go for it. You do what you need to.
Believe it or not, we don't just podcast all day. We actually have other jobs that pay all the bills.
Believe it or not.
Believe it or not.
I'm pretty sure they believe it.
One fan. I believe it. We see you, Australia. So I work in an industry where we work with people who are what we would call housing insecure. They don't have a secure roof over their heads. They're people who are homeless. That's what I do for my day job, is we help people who are homeless find a home. It takes a lot of time.
It does take a lot of time.
It takes a lot of time. So a lot of compassion, a lot of second chances. Human beings need a lot of chances. Some need 1 or 2. Some need 20.
Mm-hmm.
But where those two people, the one who needed 2 extra chances and the one who needs 20, where they get to after that point is kind of the same.
Yeah.
So when you take that to sports, I think Americans are like, hey, we love it when we hear the story of the guy who just was grinding for years
Yeah.
and finally won.
Yeah.
Right? Like we love that. We love that. But what it takes is the rebuilding seasons where ain't nobody winning, but the players are still there.
Yeah.
Also, I'm gonna bring my sports life into this. Being a Browns fan, I have been a Browns fan for my entire life because I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. And there are players who have been on the Browns for a long time when they weren't winning. And when they finally are, the Browns are going to the playoffs this season. And those players are on the team. Americans, we freaking love that.
Yeah.
There's this final payoff that you get as a sports fan.
A longevity to
There's a longevity where you've seen the ups, you've seen the downs, the mountaintops, the valleys, and it's the same player. It's the same team. And you're like, my God, F1, it gives you that when it comes to the team. It doesn't give you that necessarily when it comes to the driver.
Yeah.
Because there is this ruthlessness where it's just like, perform, you're gone. Perform, you're gone. Perform, you're gone. And we don't necessarily have that same journey with the sportsman in the way that we do in some American sports.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think what's interesting about the comparison is that you're a Browns fan.
Yeah. I'm born into being a Browns fan. Like, you don't have a choice with it.
And you're a Max fan.
I know, right? Stunning.
Like, you're a Browns fan because you love the team. You like Red Bull, you like Christian, but you're a Max fan. If Max was to go to Ferrari, would you follow Max? Like, if Hamilton was to go to McLaren, I'd follow Hamilton. It would be a bonus because McLaren's my second favorite team. But you know what I mean? Like, I think F1's different because as much as it is definitely a team sport, it's so driver-driven and driver personality.
It is.
People love their drivers. Like, that's why people who were Heat fans are now Laker fans. Because LeBron went from... But that's not the normal in basketball. People are Lakers fans.
Well, because
they're Clippers fans.
Because teams are rooted in place. So the Browns are in Cleveland. And if you're from Cleveland, you are intrinsically tied to place. Red Bull has fans all over the world.
Correct.
Right? So it is more indicative to me being a Max fan.
Yes.
I don't live where Max lives.
Right.
But I can be a fan of him. Monaco? I mean...
I guess he does live in Monaco now.
But I think that is the difference, right? Is you have a global sport. F1 is truly a global sport.
Correct.
And people are fans of the drivers. You do have team fans. I love Christian. I love Red Bull. I do. There's a part of me that loves how dedicated they are to the proposition that they want to be dominant.
Yes. There is something there's something enticing about an energy drink company that is suddenly...
I want that. A company that isn't
amazing.
A Mercedes, that isn't a Ferrari, that isn't a McLaren, that doesn't have the pedigree of being an automotive giant. They're like, we do energy drinks, and also we're going to kick your butt on the racetrack in the best racing sport in the world. What?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It is very cool.
So anyway, I think that's the distinction. There's a lot of tension, a lot of kind of like confusion, I feel, but I think that's where that's at for me. It's like, part of me is like, I love when I can follow a player and see the ups and the downs, and he's still in the sport.
Totally.
Think of, for example, Baker Mayfield. All over the place. Quarterback was with the Browns. Mayfield. He bounced around a bunch. Now he's with the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are freaking going to the playoffs. And Baker's at the head of that.
Yeah.
But imagine if after his first season, it's like, yeah, you're done.
Yeah.
And he's back in the minor leagues playing in Canada, right? Like, where's
playing with the communists in Canada.
Here's I think what it comes down to, and this is where I'm going to tie my work life into this. There's the possibility of redemption.
Yes.
One doesn't necessarily.
You and I disagree on this. I don't care.
Red Bull does not give you the possibility for redemption.
That's the only thing I like about Red Bull.
And I believe
it's just two things. I like Christian Horner. I think he's awesome.
He's great.
And I like the fact that here's what I appreciate about people. They're the least, this is why we started this whole thing.
I know, right?
They're the least European about F1 than all the other teams. Because all the other teams will say, we love him, we love him, we love him. Valtteri, you're going to Alfa Romeo. We're bringing in George Russell. Like, it's just...
They're not honest.
No, they're not. Whereas Red Bull's like, we're with him. everyone has bad weekends. Another bad weekend, bit of a tough story. We're going to be working behind the scenes. We're going to figure out what this is. Another bad weekend, we're going to make sure that we, this person tries to figure out what's going on and that they sort it out. Another bad week, yeah, if we keep continuing this form, we're going to have to figure it out. It's sink or swim here at Red Bull. And it sure as heck is. They bought flipping Pierre in, dropped him, brought Albon in, dropped him, brought Checo in. Like, they are savage. And I'm here for it. Like, because why? The season of Drive to Survive is about to start again, and we're going to hear Christian Horner say it again.
Of course we are.
If you're going to be at Red Bull, you'll be there as long as you win.
Yeah. And that is why I am torn.
And that's why I love F1.
I love it. I love that the best are the ones who survive. And I'm also torn because I have seen how powerful redemption can be when it plays out in sports.
And I love that for every other sport but F1. That's all I'm saying. And I don't watch any other sport.
We could combine.
No.
Nick de Vries comes back.
Nick de Vries is not
for Williams. Get rid of Sargent.
Okay, here is the part that actually is nuts. Red Bull killed Nick de Vries' career.
Helmut Marko.
He's done.
Took a sledgehammer to his kneecaps and
Red Bull did.
Decimated his career.
But here's the thing. Nick de Vries took a gamble, and it did not pay off.
He went like Red Bull adjacent, not even to the main
100%.
belly of the beast.
100%.
He went adjacent Red Bull, and they still kneecapped
exactly.
him.
But his career is done. Like, he's out driving in some other racing thing.
Maybe.
It doesn't matter.
No,
he's never coming back to Formula One. That was his dream since he was.
That's tough.
6 years old.
So tough.
He's done. He got 10 races. And he will have to live with that for the rest of his life. And there is something in that I love. I don't know if that makes me terrible, but it is the greatest sport in the world. And so if you are not the greatest in the world, you will not survive. You come in and you are going up against people who are in the history books. Sebastian Vettel, Max Verstappen, and Hamilton were all on the grid. And Alonso at the exact same time.
God,
we're talking about the greatest people in the history of this sport, all on the grid at the same time. And you know what? People are still here and people aren't, and that's great.
Yeah.
Max came in at 17 years old and established himself. Hamilton came in
54 wins later.
And it doesn't matter about where you come from. Hamilton had nothing. He came in and he has created a legacy in F1. Yeah, Max had pedigree. He has come in, he's created and blazed ahead of his father. Like, it doesn't matter where you start. If you perform, you are going to stay. And that's what I love about Formula One. It doesn't matter. Just go out there and be the best. You got here because you thought you were. Now prove it. That's F1.
Got you preaching.
Anyway, let's talk about next year. Let's
look ahead.
What are they going to do next year?
I mean,
mini Red Bull.
We referenced it. They're getting closer to Red Bull. Who wouldn't after this year?
Well, they tried stepping away. And it didn't work out.
No.
And so they're going back to basically underneath the F1 regulations, you can purchase certain things from other Formula teams. So that's how McLaren has a Mercedes engine. That's why Haas has a Ferrari engine and transmission, because you can buy certain parts of the cars from other constructors. Now, Zach Brown, who is the team principal and CEO of McLaren Racing, and Freddie Vasseur, who is the team principal for Ferrari, have been making a lot of comments about how concerned they are about the Red Bull partnership between AlphaTauri and Red Bull, because Red Bull Racing it's been made clear that AlphaTauri is going to basically buy as many things as they can underneath the regulations from Red Bull. Now, the difference when McLaren goes, I want to buy parts from Mercedes, is Mercedes has zero incentive in any way, shape, or form
they're competitors
to over give anything outside of the regulation.
Yeah, of course.
it behooves the Red Bull brand in general
Yes.
if both of those teams are performing at peak performance. It makes their car look better, both of them. It makes their sponsors look better, both of them.
They sell more energy drinks.
Sure. It raises every aspect of their business if both of their cars. So naturally, McLaren and Ferrari's team bosses are going, hey, guys, I know that we can buy things under the regulation, but these two teams are owned by the same company.
Yeah.
And so if we're looking at next year, the most dominant car of this era of F1 now just being given to AlphaTauri, how is that fair to the rest of the grid?
Yeah, and
I think it's a valid
point. There isn't a relationship between two other teams on the grid that's like this one.
Correct.
So yeah, it is going to be a different relationship, and AlphaTauri stands to benefit from that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Period. My thing is, as long as it's within regulations,
Mm-hmm.
they're not doing anything that's outside regulations. They're not doing anything that's illegal. Like, they have two teams, and everyone knows they have two teams.
I want to make this controversial, but I think the reality is I think Red Bull has too much to risk by trying to cheat the lines. Yeah. They have too much to. They got caught because of overspending,
catering, and someone was in the hospital for too long.
I'm not even going to take the bait. I'm not even going to take. Yeah,
someone who they thought was going to die, who didn't end up dying. They had to pay medical bills for longer than they thought, which is terrible to even say it that way. But that's what Christian said. Yeah. And they spent too much on catering, and I'm sure some other miscellaneous line items.
Yeah, sure, exactly. And anyway, they got nipped for that.
They did,
and so they're not trying to get disqualified in any way, shape, or form. But excuse me, I do think there is a valid concern where 20% of the grid could have an advantage by sharing information, and it's very hard to regulate that. 20% of the grid.
But you're the one that doesn't want more rules.
I don't want more rules, which is why I'm torn here. That's what I'm saying. Like, I hate rules. I hate rules. I hate laws. I hate them all. I want them all removed. I want anarchy. I'm just kidding. But
no, please.
I just don't know a way around this, but I do think I don't think this topic is going away. And I do think if they come out and they start dominating next year, like if they go from 8th to suddenly 3, 4, 5th, 6th on the grid, like there will be investigations, there will be formal complaints, there will be all types of haberdasheries and hemoglobins going on.
Zach Brown will be at the front of all
having a field day.
Zach Brown does love to raise a good complaint.
He's a little Turner.
He loves getting his coalition together and raising a stink. But now he has more to lose because his team is more competitive this year.
100%.
Way more competitive than they've been in past. So
and they're coming out swinging.
He's seeding the idea now, so that when it becomes a problem, he can say, "I told you before the season started." He's smart.
I'm with you on this.
So you're right. But I think if it actually comes to where AlphaTauri is actually competitive, then it's going to be the investigations and looking into it, making sure that the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted and all that kind of stuff.
It's going to be hilarious. The 2024 season is something to look forward to. Daniel Ricciardo, Yuki Tsunoda,
and all the drivers who are out of contract.
It's going to be absolutely nuts. This team is one to watch as we go into this year's season. Thanks again for joining us this week as we dived into our observations about the 2023 season of AlphaTauri's on the Rolling Start podcast. Okay, so next week, we're talking about another team.
One of your favorites.
It's my second favorite team.
You're wearing a t-shirt, I think.
I'm wearing a McLaren t-shirt right now. That's who we'll be talking about next week. Perfect segue from Zach Brown.
Absolutely.
Our American brother.
Yeah.
He loves us.
We love Zach.
We appreciate him. And he actually truly is someone that has helped shape the Formula One narrative and story over the last few years. And so we're excited to see everything that they did in 2023 and what is to come in 2024. So you do not want to miss it. We will see you next week. Do not forget to subscribe and like us on whatever platform you're watching on, and sign up to win this cup. It has my DNA on it.
Please take it from us.
Goodbye. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.